So tonight, first we will connect with Orland Bishop and his community, including Redman. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Wonderful to be together again. Orland, we have a wonderful first question, kind of multi-layered for you. So let's try this. How will the new story for humanity actually be born? Will it be a fusion of the old story and the new story? And how do we listen to it? How do we tune into this new story as it's actually coming to birth? A good question, eh?
Very great question. It's like there's like the mind. The new mind came out of the old mind. So all new stories will come out of the old stories. Stories change when we give them meaning or when we come to understand the meaning. And a new story is born. It's called insight. We live in an age in which we will actually gain more insight into the old stories because we need them more than ever. And it's not that we need a new story, we need a new understanding of the stories that have already given humanity so much. And so a critical kind of step is that we're actually expanding our mind. And the mind is actually the new story. How we think, how we feel, how we look at reality will actually give us a different sense of ourselves and each other. And I think one of the ways that we are actually coming into new stories, actually new relationships. There are relationships that have never been in the world before, and we're making them now, and they will create new stories.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm sure our viewer at home loved your answer just now. Redman, one for you, coming from one of our viewers tonight. How are you actually getting on in life? Do you work in the community? Are you working with Orland? What are you doing to keep these new stories moving on?
Well, I work closely with Orland. I, per se, don't have any commitment towards any organization that pays me to do the things that I do. It just, man, I just, like I told Orland, I'm walking by faith, not by sight anymore. So I just do it just for the name of God, man, and just praising him for letting me making that agreement to come back to this earth and man, be with my family and friends, and also I made that commitment towards doing what he assigned me to do, and that's to teach about peace and love, and about making that agreement with with your community as well as your loved ones. So I'm working real heavy with him and just promoting with him, and that's about it.
That's very poetic. Thank you. That's really beautiful. Orland, another one for you from a viewer. Do you see a lot of PTSD with people on the street? Do you see it every day, people being traumatized? What does it actually look like? This is a viewer wanting to know, what does it look like? And what can we do about it at home? Is there anything you can recommend for people at home to actually do to help this situation?
Yes. Anyone who's struggling with attention deficit requires attention. Attention heals. Attention connects not only to the mind, but to the deep self that organizes the will. If we can get more people to put intention into attention, there's a self-recovery of the will that actually causes perception and cognition can actually become developed. Attention generates interest. And I think what is important for anyone who's going through this kind of stress is for them to understand that other people have interest in them. When people go through a trauma, the worst thing is to do is to ignore them. And in a culture that ignores so many because we think their wounds are actually their own personal thing to carry, is a culture that's actually going to create more of this kind of phenomenon. We live in a stressful culture because we ignore creativity around taking interest in another person's healing.
Redman, do you agree with that? How
Yeah.
does that sound to you?
Oh yes, that's this is what I go through about the life lessons, and I totally commit towards that. That's why I do what I do. I create programs just so we can have new storytellers to talk about the possibility of creativity. You know what I mean? In mind. So, oh yeah, I follow his work ultimately ever since.
All right. Oh, that's great. Redman, we have another question for you from a viewer, and it's asked very respectfully. I can see that. Can you talk about what's happening with the Crips and the Bloods now? Are you able to tell us a little bit of where we are today?
Where we are today is, I can actually say, it's at a critical point where it can go either or. I mean, right now, from my area, is at a standstill where it's possibility it can't go wrong, and the possibility of making peace and making humble decisions. Right now, it's just man, it's just so crazy, and because we don't have the political leaders that step up and confront, and we don't have a lot of courage people to tell what's right from wrong. So right now, what we establishing inside the different neighborhoods is them voices just to give them conscious thoughts about peace, because a lot of the Crips and Bloods that's out here, they don't really have a vision of peace. They don't really know how to voice their opinion of peace because they have so many people that's in power that's already have the resources to make the decisions, but they don't go out and really voice it towards the community at point. So they let other entities make the decision for them. And that's where it's right now. That's where it's getting towards of understanding amongst each other, giving these youngsters the opportunity to voice their vision for peace. So it's on a shaky point, but it's possible.
Well, it's wonderful for you to give us an update like that. I appreciate it, and I know the viewers do as well. Orland, here's a deceptively simple question from one of our viewers. What is giving you hope to keep up with this work?
Hope is born of struggle. If I find my life to be meaningful, I will always be hopeful that it will connect with the health that is part of our, we say, spiritual environment. There were conditions far greater than what I'm facing now. So I have nothing to really complain about. I'm grateful for those who have struggled even unto death for where I stand right now. So I'm in gratitude. There is something that generates, when you're grateful for something, it generates the willingness to play your part. And I know what I do is only part. It's not the whole thing. And I'm willing to still play my part. That's what I do.
Strong words, strong words. Here's one from me that I didn't get a chance to ask you during our actual show taping. And it's inspired by the fact I've been driving up and down from San Francisco to Los Angeles and back a number of times over the past couple of months. And I've been listening to an audio recording of the Iliad. And I understand that you've used that a bit on the streets to tell the story of warfare between warring families 2,500 years ago. Has it had any effect? What happens when you share that story of Homer from 2,500 years ago?
Well, it becomes familiar. People join the story and say, I know that story, not from having read the book or heard it through philosophy classes or psychology classes, but through their own narrative.
Wow.
Homer did something for the Western mind. It gave us a story to relate to.
Yeah.
Because this phenomenon, one can say it's prophecy, that he saw the forthcoming future generations that would need a story like this. But it's also a story that's being relived and retold and reimagined. And I think we'll have the Odyssey for a long, long time, the Iliad for a long, long time, but new stories as well that are emerging from that.
Beautiful, beautiful. The first street fight, you might say. Here's another question for you, Orland. I'll read this one. Mr. Bishop, please talk more about the prophecy that you mentioned in the program. The prophecy you mentioned was part of something called Sobono. We see you in the Spirit's eye. It's wonderful. Somebody picked up on that watching this evening.
Well, I appreciate the question so much. Sawubona was a gift to us. An elder in South Africa asked us to use the word as part of our presencing of ourselves with each other. Sawubona is a Zulu word that means we see. And it's in a certain way an idea that seeing is not an individual process. Seeing is actually part of the spirit of the time. That this particular capacity is connected to, say, the world vision. So the world is trying to see through us. The ancestors are trying to see through us. And what they see is not our limitations, they see our full potential. So Sawubona is saying, can we agree to the full potential that others see in you? Mm-hmm. Not your own self-doubt, not your own self-questioning. So prophecy is at the fact that there are people, the seers, the visionaries who see us doing certain things, and they hope that we will actually acknowledge that and do it. And so Sawubona is a framing of the prophecy that if I see you and you see me, then we should agree to what that mutual seeing can generate. And I think it's very, very, very hopeful that we can actually see more through each other's future.
Right. Redman, do people on the street feel like Orland sees them?
Yes, because they see him with me, and they know how I transform from how I was to now. It's a real eye opener.
All right, beautiful, beautiful. Another one for you, Orland. Can you ask Orland to talk more about his work with the European young people that we've just seen in this show? Are you continuing to work with them? Is the interest still there? Are those people coming to work with you in the street?
Well, Shade is interested in many cultures, the pathways of where cultures converge. Cultures converge in hospitality. If you can host someone, they will bring their culture into, the shared space. And so we've been doing this mentorship process, not in a certain way as a culturally specific path of development, but to use all the processes of knowledge and wisdom that all cultures have been since stored, and use different impulses to help people find the right conversation that they want to be in and share. And so, yes, we continue to work with the International Youth Initiative program in Sweden, the consciousness engagement courses in Germany and other places, because we want to host that.
Wonderful. I love that. To have the right conversation. That's powerful. Redman, any closing thoughts for tonight's web chat?
The closing thoughts is the agreement of life and death was sincere, and is throughout all the deprived communities, understanding that just having that passion to live, even though you're going through so much destructive wonders that's around you, makes you want to just give up. But having that person that you can really trust and really have that make that agreement and making that choice to live is a must, because as a youth, as I was growing up, I didn't have that. I had a lot of would-be so-called how should I say people that I call heroes or so-called homies and leaders. I grew to see that the leaders were never would just only pretend, and just find someone that was real passionate and didn't even know, and just by eyesight and seeing, it brought me towards him, towards Orland. And I really want to have the young people to really understand that they gotta find that certain person, a friend, or a foe, man, is to make that commends and make that agreement, because life is like it's like a box of chocolate. You never know what you're gonna get. And so you gotta make sure that you commit towards it, because life, you can make it, you know what I mean? It's just about the choices. And a lot of young cats, a lot of young people that's out there, man, in my area, like in Watson, man, all in Chicago and all across the world that's deprived and lack of leadership because they don't have, they feel lost. I'm just here to tell the youngsters that's out there that felt man the same way that I felt towards in 2001 when I first felt that life or death situation. I understand what you're going through. Just know that life is great when you make that choice, and you got to just be a man and stand up for what you want to live for. God bless.
Beautiful words. I think I can speak for the Global Spirit community that it's really been an honor to listen to the two of you. Thank you for helping us carry on this long conversation. And we are truly trying to encourage everyone in every home across America to have conversations like this every night. So thank you very much, fellas. Thank you.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much.
Cheers. Thank you. Now there's a friendly face. Hello, Kay.
Hi there. How are you?
Oh, just wonderful. Nice to see you again.
To see you.
Were you able to watch the show this evening?
We weren't able to. Yeah, we weren't able to do that.
Okay. Well, we have a few questions for you from listeners across the country and different parts of the world who were pretty captivated by our conversation this evening. The first question is, were Ruth, Mona, and Alfredo the first Coast Miwok and Ohlone peoples that you ever met? And in your tradition, do Native people from different corners of the country know each other like this? And then the follow-up is, why or why not do Indian people know each other from different corners of the country? It's a curious question, isn't it?
It is. It is. Wonderful question. No, I had never met them before. You saw the very first time I ever laid eyes on them in that video. That was when we were actually introduced. And immediately, I think you could tell that we all felt a kinship with one another. We felt a connection. And it was very exciting for me. I think it was for them too, because of this program, we might never have met if it weren't for this program. And so we were so grateful for that opportunity. It just seemed so symbolic that we had people from the East meet with people from the West, and it was very moving for me to have that happen. But yes, we immediately felt a closeness and a connection because just our being there meant that we really cared about sharing who we are and who our ancestors were, and sharing our stories about what we're doing today and what has happened in the past, and we felt that right from the beginning. And what was the other part of your question, the last part?
Do you grow up knowing about other Indian nations, Indian families around the country? Do you, when you go to school, do you learn about each other? That was in the question from our viewer.
That depends on the person. For every person, it's a different experience. So some people do grow up knowing about Native peoples from other parts of Turtle Island, knowing about Indigenous peoples from other part of the world. And some Native people don't learn about those things ever. Some learn about it later on in life. And some people don't even know about some Native people don't even know about their own culture and their own history. Because for a long time, our people were taught to be ashamed of who we were and what our history was. So for instance, my mother's generation, most of those people, and going back to the end of the 1800s all the way up to present day, there were and still are situations where Native people were taught to be ashamed of who they were and to hide who they were, and it wasn't spoken about. It was a matter of survival in some cases. And it's only been fairly recently, I think, that more and more and more of our people um, have felt as though it's okay now to express who they are. It's important to express who they are, to learn about who they are and their ancestors, and to talk about it and not hide it. And um, it's an interesting question because it's a complicated question. It didn't just happen to us; it happened to Indigenous peoples all over the world.
That's right. That's a wonderful question. Very instructive. Thank you for sharing that. Here's another one from another viewer this evening. How far and wide do Native peoples share the Wampum Belt story about the two parallel boats?
I'm so glad you brought that up. The two-row wampum, the Gaswenta. We would love to have everybody in the world know about that story because we think it's a very, very powerful story, an important one. It's a story in which we are not only sharing the desire to show respect to each other, to all peoples around the world. But also another aspect of that wampum belt is that we are supposed to show respect, all of us, all the people of the world, for the water, for all the waters of the world, and for the environment. We all have a responsibility. This is part of that story that I didn't get to tell in the documentary, but I'm so glad I get to tell it now. And it's an important part of the story that it teaches that we all have a responsibility and a duty to take care of the waters of the world and the environment, not just for our own sakes, but for everyone's sakes and for the future generations.
I'm glad you got to add that part as well. Thank you. And now here's a question that came into us via the miracle of a video clip.
Hi, Kay. Thank you for the opportunity to ask you a question directly. I'm really glad to have this opportunity. And I was just wondering, how much freedom do you have to tell stories about the origins of your people? And basically, who decides on how much you can tell? Thank you so much.
The first time I was asked to tell stories, I went to various elders and asked them, is it okay for me to share stories about our culture, about our history? And they said, yes, those stories need to be told. And I said, well, is there anything I should talk about? And is there anything I shouldn't talk about? And I was told it's very important to talk about the treaties. People need to know what treaties mean. It's very important to talk about wampum because there are misconceptions about what wampum is. And it's very important to remind people that we are still here today, that we are not something or people of the past, but that we are here today. Our past is important, but we're still here. We still know who we are. And we have something that we feel is beautiful and important to share with people. And so I still do that. I still ask people probably once a year, whenever I see somebody who's an elder, a chief, a clan mother, I'll ask them, is it okay for me to do what I'm doing? And is it okay for me to share, for instance, our creation story? And I just recently asked people that question because I was thinking about maybe putting that creation story on a CD. And what I was told was, yes, people need to know how we see our relationship with the rest of the universe. But make sure that you tell people that what I am sharing with them is one version, because there are different versions of it. So we just have to make sure that I say that it's one version and the way I understand it.
Wise words. I wish all elders could speak with the youth of the world the way you just described. That's wonderful. And now here's another question from a viewer. And please forgive my pronunciation in advance of your community, but what are the most pressing issues today in the Kanatio Hareki community? Am I remotely close?
Oh, well, I knew what you were referring to. Nice try. It's pronounced Ganajohalege. Ganajohalege. And Ganajohalege is a community, a Mohawk community that was reestablished in 1993 on lands that were, before the Revolutionary War, the site of many, many, many Mohawk Bear Clan villages. After the Revolutionary War, many Mohawk people left the Mohawk Valley in central New York State and took with them the prophecy that someday they might return there. And that happened in 1993. And in 1993, Ganajohalege was reestablished with the hope of forming a community where traditional people, traditional Mohawk people could go and live as lightly as possible on Mother Earth and in a traditional way with traditional teachings. And so there's an organic farm there, and the population has sometimes been large, sometimes small. And in 1997, it was decided that we would start offering Mohawk language immersion classes there. And so we've been offering those classes there every summer since 1998. And for us, that's a very, very important goal, is to revitalize our languages, because when our people lose their languages, they lose a certain degree of their identity, a certain amount of pride. Our ceremonies are supposed to be held in our languages, and so if we lose our languages, then we also lose that ability to conduct our spiritual ceremonies in that language. So it's very important for us to maintain our spirituality, our identity, and our pride, to maintain those languages. And also they say that if you lose your language, that you lose at least 50% of your cultural identity and or your cultural links, because you've heard the expression lost in translation. When you, it's very difficult to translate everything from one language to another without losing a great deal of the context. So that's one of the things, one of the concerns that we have there, is the revitalization of Mohawk language.
Thank you for bringing us up to date. Just one last question. I recall when we were shooting the scenes with our Ohlone friends in the Ohlone wilderness outside of the Bay Area, that you turned to me and said that you couldn't wait until you got back home to tell your family what that encounter with the Ohlone people was actually like. And I found that to be a very touching, tender moment. Can you share with us a little bit of what you did describe to your family and friends back home about your time with the Ohlone people?
I felt as though I had met more relatives. I felt like I connected with an even larger family than I knew about before. It felt just like I was with family from that very first hug. And it just grew, that feeling just grew stronger as we sat and we talked and laughed together and told stories and exchanged gifts. And the connection just grew stronger and stronger and stronger. I felt like I was united with family members that I didn't know about before.
What a wonderful way to end our conversation this evening. Thank you so much for participating with us and carrying on the wonderful conversation that we had on the show. So thank you, Kay.
Thank you.
See you next time.